ranking every single live-action Spider-Man movie up to date as of February 2025. Let's jump right into it. In number 8, I have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a very fun movie, but it's incredibly flawed. This is still the best looking Spider-Man movie to date though. The CGI, the swinging, are by far the best. It looks gorgeous. The plot of the movie has its issues for sure, but Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone carry this movie on their backs. Both the betrayals and the on-screen romance. For sure the best Spider-Man franchise has ever seen. Electro was pretty mid in the movie, I'm not gonna lie. Decent story, but poor execution. Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 pretty much perfected this storyline. Gwen's death broke my little 11-year-old's heart. I was in tears. Oh yeah, and Rhino existed. And also the parent storyline. Anyway. In number 7, we have The Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man is a film that I loved as a kid, and then liked less and less as I got older. But then I grew to appreciate it again. I hated the suit. I still low-key do. I mean, it's growing on me, but still. The lenses are just a horrible touch. It looks a little too futuristic too. It's too dark. If the lenses were white and maybe even the colors were a little bit brighter, it would be 10 times better. Anyway, the Lizard was a good villain in my opinion. They did a good job with him. Too many nighttime scenes though, at least from what I remember. And of course, Peter and Gwen's romance being a massive plus of the film. Fight scenes were pretty solid, some were better than others. I wasn't too fond of the Peter Parker portrayal, but knowing there's a multiverse and different versions of Spider-Man, it doesn't bother me anymore. I just wasn't used to a non-traditional Peter Parker. Number 6, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Homecoming is an interesting movie. It's a movie I didn't always appreciate, but it's a solid film. It's just overrated, and I never saw the hype for it. Like, yeah, it's better than both the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but that's not saying much. How is it compared to the others? It has like one memorable fight scene, no interesting love interest. I feel like the actions didn't have any consequences in this movie. It was cool seeing Iron Man though. This movie just isn't the most rewatchable or memorable compared to every other film. First Amazing Spider-Man is close, but still. Vulture was definitely a highlight of this movie. He was truly the best part of the movie alongside with the guy in the chair, the man himself, Ned Leeds. Number 5, we have Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is a movie I will always defend like crazy. The flaws aren't even flaws at this point. From this movie and forward, these are incredible Spider-Man films. There's a huge gap between this and Homecoming for me. Did this movie have too many villains? Yes, but it worked, for me at least. Would it have been better with less? Probably, but still. Let's talk about them. They've been building up Harry since the first film. The execution of New Goblin was great. He even had a redemption arc at the end. I mean, come on. Flint Marko, the Sandman, great backstory. You fell for him. Was the retcon for Uncle Ben's death unnecessary? Yes. But he added to the story and made it even more personal for Peter, so it worked. He also had a moment with Peter at the end. I wish the deleted scene with his daughter Penny wasn't removed. That scene was beautiful. And now we made it to Eddie Brock, Venom. I liked it. Not every Venom has to be this big, bulky version of him. In this universe, he's literally just like an evil mirrored version of Peter. They wanted the same things, but he was just like more of a dick. Even more with the symbiote. I think all 3 villains worked. Peter was low-key of a prick in this movie, but unintentionally, of course. You know, he's a nerdy loser, finally gets the girl. He's able to balance both lives just fine. He was just full of himself and he didn't pay much attention to MJ, which is his fault for sure, obviously. But actions have consequences, because it led to MJ and Harry kissing. Which I don't condone, but yeah, MJ was also justified for feeling upset, by the way. I hate when people discredit her character in these movies, like she isn't justified for most of it. Aunt May was a delight as always, love her in all these movies. The action sequences were amazing, dialogue's awesome, and Emo Peter, peak. Legendary. It was Peter doing things he thought was cool. That was awesome. The only miss was the adaptation of Gwen Stacy. She wasn't utilized the best in this film, she was kind of just there. And also, can we talk about Peter pulling MJ, Gwen, Betty, and Ursula in the same movie? Yeah, no. Peter's a god. W. Peter. Number 4, Spider-Man Far From Home. Far From Home went from being beloved to hated like crazy for no reason. This movie deserves its flowers and so much more. It's Homecoming but better. Way more swinging scenes, better action sequences, improved CGI, way better suit. Mysterio is arguably a better villain. He's so awesome. I love that they left New York. A Spider-Man movie outside the country is pretty peak. Ned and Betty were hilarious in this movie. This movie is so fun and has a very good story. The side characters just as good as they were in Homecoming. My one main issue is the romance, I guess. The Peter and MJ romance felt a little bit forced because Peter showed zero interest in her in Homecoming. It was obvious she liked him, but it's fine, I guess. I also didn't like them calling the Spidey sense Peter Tingle, but that's just a minor nitpick. Number 3, we have Spider-Man No Way Home. No Way Home is every Spider-Man fan's wettest dreams. This movie is very fan service, but that's okay. This movie's a great film. The villains played a good part in the movie. Maybe not Lizard and Sandman, but it was still cool to see them. Tobey and Andrew had a great amount of screen time. It sounds like they had very little, but it was actually a pretty good amount. Selfishly, I'd want more, but it's not their film, it's Tom's. I love Goblin as the main villain. I love how big of a role Ned and MJ play in this movie. Doctor Strange was a great addition to the film. Aunt May was amazing in this movie. This is by far her best work in the MCU. Her words are very impactful. She even got to say the iconic line that with great power there must also come great responsibility. Peter 2 and Peter 3 are the best in this movie. The scenes with the three of them together are by far the highlight of the film. This movie had great fight scenes, great moments all around. I love that Peter makes a massive sacrifice in this film. Unless Spider-Man 4 somehow has everybody remember and make this ending meaningless, this will be the greatest ending to any Spider-Man movie to this date. Yeah, 100% is. Number 2, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is arguably considered the best by many, and I do think it's a masterpiece. The story, the characters, everything. I loved everything about this movie. To everyone who likes to criticize MJ in these movies, you have to think about how everybody in Peter's life sees him. His professor sees a student who is always late, never puts in effort. His best friend sees his best friend siding with Spider-Man, who thinks killed his father, instead of choosing his side. MJ is constantly disappointed because Peter cannot keep his promises. Aunt May sees a nephew who lets people down, but she knows, so she doesn't, But we see things from Peter's perspective. Of course, we know he's Spider-Man and they don't. That's why we want to root for him. That's why we feel so bad for him. And of course, Otto, he's a greatly written character. Doc Ock is an amazing villain. And plus, Peter got the girl at the end, so W. One thing that threw me off a little bit, Peter losing his powers. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But it makes sense, And lastly, number 1, we have Spider-Man. This may be biased, but I'm not sure, but it is what it is. All I know is this is my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, and there's a reason. It's my favorite film ever. It's a perfect movie, as are others on this list. This movie is the greatest and most perfect origin story I've ever seen, and it has my favorite Spider-Man suit, some of my favorite scenes, my favorite villain, my favorite everything. I just love to see Peter's origin. His mistakes after the iconic wrestling match with Bonesaw, his arc to be a better person for Uncle Ben, his scenes with MJ in this movie are on the same level of The Amazing Spider-Man, or even better, I'd argue. In this movie specifically, Peter's words to MJ, bro, has me falling for him. Anyway, each character is spectacular. Peter, MJ, Harry, Aunt May, Norman, oh my god, the Green Goblin is the biggest menace. And I didn't even mention this in Spider-Man 2 or 3, but J.K. Simmons as JJJ, J. Jonah Jameson is perfection. I'm so glad he got added to the MCU because he steals the spotlight every time. The Raimi trilogy also has amazing side and minor characters too. From people like Hoffman, to Robbie, to Betty, to Mr. Dickovich, to Ursula. Even Flash and Bruce Campbell's characters, who make cameos in every movie. This movie is just perfect, and I will always love it. Forever my favorite movie of all time. And that's my ranking. What do you guys think? Make sure to leave your list down below, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Your shots are so good.
I'd love to shoot you sometime.
Peter Parker. Peter.